what if somebody asked us, given the realities of your lives, how would a life that you value, what would it look like? What do you need? And what if you built social policy around asking people that question? Because people know what they need. It's an approach based in freedom. So Sen's first book on the capability approach is called Development as Freedom. So it's about development work, but it's very much about the freedom to make choices, the freedom to make a decision of values, a moral decision of values based on what kind of a life you value and a life that you have reason to value. So that's the caveat of his approach. So it places you within your culture. So I'm a middle-class Canadian person. I have reason to value higher education. I have reason to value being invited to a birthday party. I have reason to value events and ways of being and doing in Nicholas's life that are based on what I see his able-bodied peers doing. I want some of that, but of course I don't want it all, because I want some of it that he could do because he has a severe disability. So when I began to do tons of research then into the moral philosophy of the worth of a person with severe disability, a person who will never be employable, but a person who is a huge consumer of public funds, what claim do they have on the state? What claim do they have on me, on our extended family, on the city of Ottawa, or anybody else? So why should people care and why should they pay? On what basis is Nicholas connected to the rest of Canada or to the rest of Ontario? Where do we fit in society? I was very interested in picking that apart and saying, what are the responsibilities of the individual, the family, the community, all levels of government, the charitable sector, the private sector, business? What are the roles of supporting our life? And on what basis is he equal? And does he get to say, I want a life that I value, and others should support that? So the capability approach gave me a framework for thinking about how we can begin to pick apart roles and responsibilities of support, and how disability is really just one form of diversity, really alongside race and sex and sexual orientation and all other forms of diversity. So the capability approach made me suddenly realize that we were not outsiders, that we were not some accident of nature, nothing to do with anybody else. And when I began to think of our life experience through the lens of the capability approach, I began to think of the spectrum of human experience across the ages, across abilities. And here's another lens to think of human life and how we can support people with disabilities, but also women who have new babies, people who are survivors of cancer, or working through a cancer diagnosis or any other illness, catastrophic illness, long-term care, and the aging population. So that's why it's very political. What I'm trying to do is talk about giving care from birth to death across abilities. And that's why it's a much broader issue, because I believe we are part of humanity. We're not just on the outside looking in. we're part of what is possible, and I believe that it's the right thing to ask Nicholas, what is a good life to you, Nicholas? What kind of a life do you value? And why, and have reason to value? And so I'm also supporting my mother, who's 92.
92.
Yeah. And so, I'm going on Monday to look at nursing homes for her in Montreal. So I love my mother the same way I love my son. And they both have care needs. And so I talk about them in the same blog all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think it's a shift in thinking about what it is to be human, about how, I think we are all involved in a battle to dispel society's the inclination in society to champion independence and to revile dependency.
Mm-hmm.
We need to ask instead, how can families look after people they love from birth to death across abilities? Period. And that includes everybody. That's a conversation that no one is excluded from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a rights-based activist.
Mm.
And I think a lot of disability activists are rights-based. And
do you think of yourself as an activist?
Yeah, completely,
and
totally.
So what sort of based activist are you? What is your activism based on, if not rights?
Oh, ethics and economics. Well, I think, when you talk about rights-based, you're talking about a legal perspective. And it is a rights-based approach, to me, is at its heart adversarial. What I'm trying to do is ethically and economically position people with disabilities in society, not against society, in society. So normalize the experience of a disability without diminishing what it is. Simply that we begin to think about dependency issues differently as just, we are all dependent at some point in our lives, and it is a fundamental part of being human. So that leads to a solutions-based approach. So, it's an assumption of abundance, and it's an assumption that solutions are out there. We just haven't thought of them yet. We need to reconfigure our partnerships. We need to rethink social policy. We need to create social policy that is fundamentally least restrictive and most supportive. So we should be able to ask ourselves the question, what is the life that we value as a family, as an individual, with a dependency need? And we should be able to have some help from various sectors of society to achieve that life that we value. And it's interesting when you ask people what that looks like, it's not like people don't want diamonds and gold jewelry, They want normal, simple stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more productive and profitable to talk about a shared vision, and to talk about, this is not us and them. This is us. And, there isn't really that much difference between my mother and my son. Fundamentally. They're both people. They're both people I love. And they both got those PSWs coming in and helping them out. Well, Rosalind Carter said, every single person on earth either was a caregiver, is going to be a caregiver, or needs a caregiver. And it's Eva Kittay, the philosopher, who is also the mother, is a disability mom, who was really important for my thinking, because she separated out the idea of dependency work. And she also came up with a theory of the equality of our children, particularly those who have severe developmental disabilities. But because a lot of the theories of being human say that you're human if you have the capacity for practical reason. And if you don't have the capacity for practical reason, if you are you have a severe cognitive impairment, then a lot of people, the likes of which I'm sure you're aware, Peter Singer, Jeff McMahon, those philosophers, would say that you're not human. You can be used for live organ donation. You're not human. And you're maybe akin to a pig or a dog.
Well, Peter Singer would say less than.
Peter Singer did say to Eva Kittay's face, well, so on the basis of the theory of personhood, we can equate your daughter to that of a pig. And, he said in a conference, it was public.
Oh yeah, no, it's a well
to
known,
her face.
Perspective.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
he might think it, he might write it, but to say it to a person about their daughter is another thing. Anyway, she came up with a theory of equality, which I really, really like, and it's that we are all some mother's son. That's her. So the maternal bond of the newborn baby and the mother is the core of civil society, and it's something we all share. And on that basis, you give a last meal and a priest to somebody on death row, even the worst criminal. You have some fundamental human recognition of humanity. And what is it? It's not intelligence. It's the love that you're born with, that is received by every baby equally, or potentially equally. What I said, to the Select Committee on Developmental Services when I presented to them in this latest Select Committee hearings they've been doing in the province, is that I believe what they should be looking to do is support families. So you wanted to go around CCAC and hire the people who knew ASL. That was least restrictive. You should be able to do what it is that you value. And because we need to assume that you have the best interests of your child at heart, and we need to assume that because we value the fact that families love each other. And that can be at the heart of policy.